let me tap in and say good morning to the listeners and viewers of course, GBN. First and foremost, the listeners of Classic Radio. Good morning to you and welcome. The viewers GBN TV, good morning to you also and welcome. It's Monday, the 5th day of January 2026, folks. It's to the point. I'm your host, GT, with you this morning. Also do have in studio is Mr. Richard McPhail with us this morning. Richard, I should say Happy New Year to you.
Many happy returns to you, and I wish you all the best for 2026 and beyond.
And the same goes out to you in return. Nice to have you back. Nice to have you back and see you looking all, bright and somehow we I don't know if it's a coincidence, but we the same color shirt this morning.
Yeah. I didn't even realize.
You got the same color shirt this morning. Oh, and they say great minds think alike. Something
yes,
like the same color. Yes. All right. So let me say good morning to once again to wherever you're listening to us. If it's via our social media platforms, good morning to you also with the Facebook page, YouTube channels. Good morning and welcome. We do have a guest with us this morning. Let's go over and say good morning. Good morning to, of course, to Mr. Let me see if I could get this right. I have a way of butchering names for some reason or the other, but I hope I get this right this morning. Let me say good morning to Dr. Is it Lloyd Griffith? Dr. Lloyd Griffith. I hope I got your name right, sir. Good morning to you, sir, and welcome. How are you doing this morning?
Delighted to be here. You've got the name right. Lloyd Griffith.
Thank you so much. How are you doing this morning, sir? Welcome and Happy New Year, I should say to you also.
Well, Happy New Year and best wishes to your viewers and listeners as well.
All right. Well, we're going to get the ball started off this morning, and certainly happy to have you on today's edition of To The Point. I have a question I want to throw to you, sir. You are, of course, let's kick it off with the geopolitical and security. Now, the third border and the U.S. relations in light of your recent commentary on the U.S. Caribbean dynamics after the 2024 U.S. election, do you expect a third border security priority to shift in 2026, sir? If we could get the ball rolling with this question.
Absolutely, and it is clear that the ball has begun to roll with what we witnessed over the weekend in Venezuela. And, keep in mind that close observers of the hemisphere of U.S. foreign policy will have been conscious of a significant strategy enunciated by the United States in November of last year. That national security strategy made it obvious, made it pellucid that the United States intended to make the Western Hemisphere a top priority. And I think what we're beginning to see is that an unfolding, a manifestation of that national security strategy vis-a-vis the Western Hemisphere.
Okay, and my next question to you, in reference to the Venezuela tensions, as some folks would say, with the ongoing, border controversy and the geopolitical neighborhood trends, should Ghana prioritize to maintain its sovereignty against, that regional, should I say the word bullyism in 2026 also, sir?
Well, the harsh reality is that Ghana has been enduring the bullyism, the intimidation by Venezuela for decades. Nicolas Maduro accentuated, kind of raised the ante of the things he was doing regarding the Essequibo territory. I'm hoping that now that we've seen a change in Venezuela, in the dynamics internally, it might be a different attitude towards bullyism towards Guyana. But I think it is one of those areas we've got to keep in mind, particularly in regards to the outcome of the International Court of Justice case. You might recall that Guyana took Venezuela to the International Court of Justice in 2018 after decades of an inability for the two countries to resolve the claim as to whether the 1899 Paris Agreement, the arbitral award of Paris, is full and final and valid. Venezuela has taken a kind of now you see me, now you don't approach to the International Court of Justice, and I'm anxious to see what would be the new Venezuelan government's approach to that case before the ICJ.
Okay. I also want to roll across on the regional, militarization. Of course, given recent reports of the military assets and deployment near Venezuela, do you believe that the Caribbean can, of course, realistically maintain a zone of peace in 2026?
You may or may not know that I was in Grenada a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, I do know that, sir.
And I want to say something that I said then during that lecture. The zone of peace is a concept that sees two B words acting in a healthy tension. It's a concept that sees an interest in the being peaceful and becoming at peace continuously. The harsh reality is that the zone of peace concept is important for the region to maintain, but the harsh reality also is that the Caribbean would have very little impact on the major players that might upset that tension between being at peace and becoming continuously at peace. So that question, I think, is one of those unknowns, particularly in the context of the recent developments vis-a-vis Venezuela. The Caribbean is interested in the zone of peace, but there are things done by countries other than Caribbean countries that would influence how peaceful the region remains.
With the recent tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela over the last couple of days, sir, how concerned it is for the Caribbean in Caribbean governments and to of course in general, how concerned it is for the Caribbean and the Caribbean leaders and the impact it will have in general on the Caribbean in the immediate or in the long term to come also?
I think it's important to look at both immediate, near term and long term. And we've already begun to see the manifestation of a potential issue within CARICOM. The position taken legitimately so by Trinidad is a different position taken by the other CARICOM leaders. And I think one concern that every Caribbean person should have is the extent to which the tensions within CARICOM will continue to the point where they aggravate relations negatively and impact the good conduct of the coordinating mechanism within CARICOM. So I think the concern about the state of CARICOM is a concern that is legitimate, and it's a concern that should continue. But there's a concern also, I think, particularly by countries like Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago, about a potential out-migration from Venezuela and the flow of people who had good intentions and bad intentions, across the borders from Venezuela to Guyana, across the borders from Venezuela to Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago are not the only countries likely to be impacted by the migrant flows. You probably know that for the last 7-8 years, there were millions of people fleeing Venezuela, going as far south as Chile and Argentina. So I think the concern about migration, illegal migration, people seeking economic and political refuge under circumstances in Venezuela, that would be a concern. But let me mention one other concern, and I mentioned it as well when I was delivering that Sir Archibald Ned lecture. The economic fulcrum around which many Caribbean countries revolve is tourism. Tourism is likely to be an area that governments in the Caribbean and private sectors in the Caribbean that significantly are players in that tourism zone need to be worried about. Because this is a high season for the Caribbean, and if the tensions prolong, the anxiety about people coming to the region will be a natural anxiety that might lead people not to come to the Caribbean. So I would want to recommend that Caribbean governments, Grenadian governments, others that place high emphasis on tourism, will want to begin to work overdrive to ensure that the tourism market remains a robust one, particularly for Grenada, that last year compared to 2024 saw a decline in arrivals from the United States as well as Europe. Tourism is an area of concern both for Caribbean governments that have to do with tourism and Caribbean countries that have the potential to expand the tourism product.
Okay. Of course, my co-host, Mr. McPhail, do have a question for you. Let's go with you, Mr. McPhail.
Dr. Griffith, good morning. I heard you mention on more than one occasion this morning about a new government in Venezuela. Do you think there's really a new government or continuation of the existing regime?
Well, that is one of the things that we still have to wait and see what the how the dust settles. Because Delcy Rodriguez is the interim president, but it is quite clear that the United States, that has made it obvious that the United States will run things, they haven't settled exactly how the running of things will turn out. So I think it's important to wait and see whether new means new in name or new means new in name and nature.
Okay, I also heard President Trump make a statement yesterday or Saturday that she will remain president as long as she cooperates and does what the U.S., the empire, says to do. Mm-hmm. What do you make of that statement?
Well, the harsh reality is that the United States is in control. And it is clear that Trump does not only make statements that are hot air, he makes statements that he often puts his money where his mouth is. So it is what I like to call one of the known unknowns, how that will translate in practical reality over time. But I would take seriously what Trump says, that he intends to ensure that Venezuela is run according to what American dictates are.
Right, but he also made the statement that he's making it clear that he's after the oil in Venezuela.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There was no secret about that.
No, unapologetic, unambiguous, pellucid. But, I want to come back to something I mentioned, and I think this is an important point for me to restate. What we're seeing in Venezuela now is a direct translation of the national security strategy that the United States announced in November of last year. I want to read you just 3 sentences from that strategy that suggests that what we're seeing in Venezuela is a translation of that strategy in action. Let me read you the 3 sentences. If you go to that strategy, it's on page 15. Here is what those 3 sentences say. After years of neglect, the United States will reassert and enforce the Monroe Doctrine to restore American preeminence in the Western Hemisphere and to protect our homeland and our access to key geographies throughout the region. Sentence 2. We will deny non-hemispheric competitors the ability to position forces or other threatening capabilities or to own or control strategically vital assets. Oil is a vital asset in our hemisphere. Here's the final sentence. This Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine is a common sense and potent restoration of American power and priorities consistent with American security interests. So, listeners, ladies and gentlemen, the United States President Trump is unambiguous. And if you go further on in that strategy document, United States, it says, will prioritize commercial diplomacy to strengthen our own economy and industry. So it is obvious that what we're seeing in Venezuela is this national security strategy, the Trump corollary, being made to live, coming into life. How the strategy regarding the commercial interest, the oil, will be manifested and translated into action, that is still to be seen.
Okay.
Okay, but he does not have, or at the time, I don't think he had congressional approval. So, was that an illegal act committed, or does he?
I don't know if it's an illegal. I don't know if it's an illegal act. But what I do know is that the people who have been observing the practice of President Trump would recognize that Trump does not allow legalities or illegalities to prevent him from doing what he thinks is right. So yes, he did not get a congressional approval. And what the Secretary of State said yesterday in many media interviews is that they did not think congressional action was necessary. So whether it's legal or illegal is in some respects beside the point. The point is that there's a preponderance of Republican power in the Congress. There's a significant control of the executive by the Republicans. President Trump didn't see the necessity to ask Congress for any permission to do anything. He did it. And the world is having to live with what he did.
Dr. Griffith, response from most Caribbean leaders has been minimal in terms of very few Caribbean leaders has made any major statement in regard to what has taken place on Saturday. What are reasons why you think that is that wait and see approach from most leaders?
I think the wait and see approach is a reflection of the appropriate caution Caribbean leaders are exercising. You know, sometimes silence is what is required to speak volumes. And the silence is speaking volumes about the caution and the prudence Caribbean countries. Keep in mind that, you know, and I said this in this article in that lecture, whether you're a small nation or a large nation, but especially if you're a small nation, you've got to strike a balance between principle and pragmatism. And I think Caribbean leaders are seeing the utility of pragmatism. And why would you want to say something that will upset the United States when most of your tourists come from the United States? When most of your products that Grenada has been battling for the last couple of months now with the fisheries issues, wanting to get the restoration of its fisheries exports to the United States. So why would you, whether it's for tourism or fisheries or foreign investment, why would you want to get out there and make pronouncements that may come back to hurt your nation? So I think the prudence that you see with the silence is a reflection of the pragmatism that is commendable by Caribbean leaders. And incidentally, it's not only Caribbean leaders that are being pragmatic in this respect. Take a look across the global landscape. See how many leaders are coming out there condemning the United States. They may not like what the United States has done, but they've got to consider their own national interests in regard to trade, in regard to tariff, in regard to tourism, in regard to foreign investment. Pragmatism requires prudence, and sometimes silence should speak volumes.
But sir, do you perceive that as the right approach in the first instance?
You know, sometimes, and I think I may have mentioned this also when I was doing that lecture, it's not a question of right or wrong. If you're a small state, you've got to ask, is it prudent to take a certain approach? So I think right or wrong would take second place to prudence and principle, pragmatism and principle. May not be the right approach, but it's the approach that will allow, in the view of many leaders, I suspect, for them to survive, to be able to fight another day.
All right. Of course, Dr. Griffith, we drew for a break. Let's take it. We come back and we continue the conversation. Stay with us, folks. It's To The Point, Classic Radio, GBN TV. We will be right back after the short break. Don't touch your dial. Look.
You know, one day I woke up and, you know, they painted a set of pedestrian crossing all along the streets. You know, nobody told us how to use that thing properly.
I know how.
You're serious?
Every safe good driver knows about these things. As a driver, you have to be very attentive. You know you're coming up close to a pedestrian cross, you start slowing down immediately, looking to see if there's any pedestrian on the side getting ready to cross. If there is, you stop on the line that is a certain distance before the crosswalk. Then you would see the pedestrian put their hands out, looking directly at you, indicating that they are going to cross. And only when you have come to a complete stop, that is when they will quickly and safely cross to the other side. And then you continue happily on your journey.
Stop, look, hand out, eye contact, wait for pedestrian to cross. Then you happily continue on your journey.
This message is brought to you by this group of insurance companies, the Traffic Advisory Body, and the Traffic Department.
Wait to see my granddaughter.
Welcome back to our listeners. Welcome back, viewers, once again. It's To The Point. It's Monday, the 50th of January, 2026. And with us this morning, we have Dr. Griffith. I think it's okay to just call him Dr. Griffith in this segment this morning. Welcome back, sir, and certainly nice to have you. And, of course, Mr. McPhail, welcome back also on the program. I think you had a question for Dr. Griffith. We could just follow through.
Okay. Dr. Griffith, in terms of the Antigua response, I heard on the news that Antigua has agreed to accept prisoners from the U.S., even though they are not of Antiguan origin. What do you make of that?
Well, the Antigua is not the only country that was approached. There was a point at which Grenada was approached also last year. And the reality is that, again, in the context of pragmatism, countries have got to consider that it's in their national interests to accept or not. The Antigua would not be the only country in CARICOM to accept or to consider the acceptance. There are countries in Central America which have also been made that proposition. So I don't have a judgment, good or bad. I think it's in the interest of the leaders of Antigua and Barbuda or any other country, of course, to consider whether or not it is in their best interests to take whatever comes with that offer to house what is called third-party nationals.
But to use a term that I heard GT use a while ago, don't you think that's bullyism?
It may be bullyism, but again, let me come back to my P word: pragmatism. Pragmatism. If you're running a country, you've got to consider that you are a small fish in a big sea. There are going to be bullies. How do you deal with those bullies? It's a pragmatic approach on the part of any country, whether Antigua, Barbuda, or Grenada, or Trinidad and Tobago. What is the pragmatic in my national interests? I would imagine those leaders would say. So it may be bullyism, but it is for the leaders of the country where the request was made to accept or not accept in the context of what is principle versus pragmatism.
All right. I want to have a slight diversion. You know, in the geo-narcotic in digital age, your 2024 book, sir, Challenge Sovereignty Explores Cyber Threats as a new pillar of regional instability. How has the intersection of the traditional narcotics traffic and cybercrime evolved since the book release, sir?
Well, I think there's several things apropos that confluence between narcotics and cyber. One of the harsh realities of the last few years in regard to narcotics, for example, is that a significant increase in trafficking of cocaine from South America has been to Europe, not to the United States. And I think you've got a recognition there that there's some pressure points in the United States and some release valves in Europe that make the European market a little more lucrative. For example, I think it was May, I was in Hamburg, Germany. The Germans convened a 3-day meeting to look at the extent to which cocaine trafficking, but we also looked at other illegal substances coming from Africa and the Middle East, marijuana coming from certain parts of Europe itself into other parts of Europe. And part of what has allowed that is the use of technology, cyber and other technology, so that there's a shifting dynamic in regard to movement of illegal substances, whether it's cocaine or fentanyl or marijuana.
My next question.
Harsh realities.
So true. My next question to you revolves around the same with the narcotics, because we saw the U.S. coming into the Caribbean was basically mentioned, of course, that war on drugs, on war on narcotics, whatever they mentioned it would have been, and we see the shift. Has that made any difference in the narcotic war within the Caribbean and the U.S.? As you mentioned earlier, a majority of the drugs does not even go to the U.S. within the Caribbean. Tell me, has that made any significant difference at all, or was that just a fast per se?
Well, it's too early to tell whether or not the kinetic action, the missiles that killed many people in the Caribbean Sea and in the Eastern Pacific, it's too early to tell whether that has made a dramatic impact on the movement of drugs. But even before that kinetic action began, the harsh reality that most of the drugs going from South America to the United States were not going through the Caribbean. Most of the cocaine, most of it was not going through Venezuela. There were some going through the Venezuelan corridor and the Caribbean corridor, but much of it was going to the west coast of the United States or across the middle section of the United States from South America. So there always has been some skepticism as to whether or not those missile strikes had much to do with drugs, counter drugs, or was the target something else. And I think we can fairly easily conclude that it was, and I think I may have mentioned this in a GBN interview. Sometimes there is more in the mortar than the pestle. I think there was more in the mortar than the drugs pestle.
Okay. All right. Anything, Mr. McPhail, you want to try it again?
GT, back to the Venezuela situation. I was just wondering if Dr. Griffith could shed some light on the ease with which the president was abducted from Venezuela.
I think the ease with which that exercise was conducted is a manifestation of two things. It's a manifestation of the tactical and intelligence efficiency of United States forces, but it's also a manifestation of the unpreparedness of the Venezuelan forces.
Okay,
Even the Minister of Defense didn't know if anything happened. So I think you've got to, even if you don't like what the United States did, you've got to recognize that there was a certain proficiency and efficiency in conducting that extraction without massive numbers of troops. Reports indicate that the ground forces that were there, the extraction happened within 2.5 hours.
Do you think at any point in time that there was some sort of sellout or a buyout of the security apparatus?
Possible. It's possible. Intelligence forces work in mysterious ways, including buying people, bribing people. But I don't have any evidence as to how the extraction happened, how the groundwork was laid for the extraction to happen. But notwithstanding that, you've got to recognize two things. It was a military exercise conducted with efficiency, with intelligence efficiency, but it was also a devastation for the Venezuelan military to be taken so off guard.
Well,
something to be, and I'm sure they themselves will be reflecting on what went wrong from their standpoint.
There is something, a video circulating on social media, which speaks about an attack on the vulnerable security officers, because they were some elite officers and they were pretty vulnerable according to that video, and they were handsomely bought, handsomely paid, and that explains the ease. I don't know if you.
That may very well be.
Yeah.
That may very well be, but I don't want to speculate as to how things happen and how it didn't happen.
Right.
But what I do want to suggest, as I said before, the Venezuelan military authorities must now be doing a lot of reflection on how is it that this thing happened with such ease and they didn't really know.
Right.
Pause for reflection. And if it was a circumstance of any other country, those countries' military and intelligence forces would also want to find out how this thing could have happened in this way, and we were caught off guard so easily.
But don't you find it strange that up to this, we have not heard a figure of the number of fatalities or even casualties in the whole process?
No, I don't find that strange.
Because normally these figures are released
Saturday.
quickly.
We're talking about less than a week, so the dust really hasn't settled. Not only has the dust not really settled, as is the case with military establishments across the world, they don't often want to give all the details. Sometimes giving the details would compromise their sources for future operation. So it is not strange to me that we haven't had all the details. Yes, public wants to know ABC, but you've got to take the position, if you're in charge of a military force, you want to make some decisions as to what you want to release to the public. Because releasing the details, the hows, the whys, the whens, may compromise your own sources for future operations. So I'm not surprised that we haven't had the details. I do anticipate that the details will come drip by drip over time. But we're less than a week away from the whole thing happening.
All right.
It's not unusual.
All right. I want a slight diversion, sir. So your 2025 debut novel, it says, is it Sylvan Love and Loss, tackles the human... Sylvie's, let me get that right. Sylvie's Love and Loss tackles the human side of drug trafficking and deportation. How do you write friction allowing you to explore the drug security matrix in a way that, scholarly works could not? If I may ask you that question, sir.
Surely. That novel, Sylvie's Love and Loss, grew out of an experience I had in Grenada way back in the 1990s.
Really?
I was in Grenada in 1994 researching a book that later was published under the title Drugs and Security in the Caribbean. And I met a young woman in Belmont who had been deported from Canada for drugs. And would you believe, kind gentlemen, that she tried to sell me some cocaine? And when I told this young woman, and she did not know why I was there in Grenada. She did not know I was researching a book on drugs. But when I told her I don't do cocaine, she said, Doc, you can use it for sex. And this young woman educated me as to how to use cocaine for sex. It was such a startling experience. I said, my God, I've got to tell, when I retire, I've got to write a novel and tell this story. This was 1994. The book that I wrote, Drugs and Security, published in 1997, I remember when I sent the manuscript to the publisher, you know, academic books have to go to reviewers. One of the commentators, one of the reviewers said, Professor Griffith needs to put a footnote saying he's not advocating the use of cocaine for sex. But I would never have believed that I would learn about how to use cocaine for sex in Grenada. And so once I retired, I said, I've got to tell this story in a different form, not in an academic book, but in a novel. So hopefully you'll buy a copy and you'll read it. We had a wonderful book launch that's in George's University in March of last year. Sylvie's Love and Loss.
All right, interesting.
Drugs,
interesting.
human trafficking.
All right, great. I just had to ask you that because I picked up that bit of feeling from it, and also so that's the reason why I had to ask you that question. So,
good. You know what? Don't only ask me the question. Read the book to get the details. You have to buy the book and read it to get the details.
All right, I certainly will. I slight diversion of the conversation this morning. Transformational education, having serve as vice chancellor of the University of Guyana and the president of Fort Valley State University, what do you believe is the biggest challenge facing Caribbean higher education institution in 2026, sir?
Reluctant to identify one biggest challenge. I think it's a combination of factors to explain the challenges at the higher education level. To get to college or university, you have to go through grade school, high school. Some of the challenges that universities experience have to do with the insufficient preparation at the lower levels. What happens in the middle school, what happens in the high school makes a difference. And saying when you find people unable to calculate without a calculator, when you find students unable to compute without a computer, it's a reflection of not things that are necessarily wrong only at the college or university level. It reflects things that have not gone as well as they should have at the lower levels. Harsh reality is most Caribbean countries, the resources are so strapped that the investments in the lower level education is not sufficient. So a lot of graduating without educating happens in many Caribbean countries. Not only Caribbean countries. I've been here in the United States for several decades. It happens right here. So I think it's a reflection of the incapacities at the lower level. But it's also a reflection of the fact that higher education at the university level is not only an educational enterprise, it has to be a business enterprise. You don't run a university simply by wanting to offer education. You've got to find money to pay for those professors. You've got to find money for those labs. Especially if you are a research-oriented university, you've got to find money to facilitate the research by the lecturers. So it is a significant cost enterprise, and sometimes the monies are just not there to make the efficiencies and the desired outcomes happen the way the leaders would want for those societies. And again, this is true not only of the United States, it's true not only of the Caribbean, it's true of the United States, it's true of other countries around the world.
Okay, great. Anything you want to ask, Mr. Of course?
No. Not right now.
Okay. Of course, Dr. Griffith, we drew for a break. Let's take it. We come back and we get into the final segment of today's program. Stay with us, folks. To the Point, Classic Radio GBN TV. We will be right back after the short break. Don't touch it down.
GBN Television News at 7, a pulse on all things Grenadian. Look out for our new features through expanded synergies with our media partners in Barbados, St. Lucia, Jamaica, Trinidad, and beyond. Capturing the latest in news, sports, weather, and entertainment. Credible, informative. Thank you for making us number one. News at 7, live, Monday to Friday on GBN Television, Channel 7 and 11, K105.5 and 105.9, Hot 98.5 and 98.7, GBN Television Facebook page and YouTube channel, and www.gbn.gd. GBN, with you anywhere and everywhere.
Welcome back to our listeners. Welcome back, viewers, once again. It's To The Point here on Classic Radio and GBN TV. With me this morning, we have, of course, Dr. Griffith and, of course, Mr. McPhail with us this morning on today's edition of To The Point. Dr. Griffith, welcome back. I have one more question I want to ask you, sir, before we take a wrap for today's edition. Now, the 2025, Guyana election, you should I say extensively analyze the consequentials of the 2025 election in Guyana. What is your assessment of the new government process in balancing oil wealth with the climate change peril? You detail that in your 2025 book, sir. Oil change and climate change in Guyana, that wet neighborhood. Talk to me in reference to that, sir.
Well, we would need a whole different program for that.
I know, just maybe the shorter version, most likely.
The shorter version is the following. Guyana has a wonderful opportunity with the oil bounty. But, it's often said that with some good sometimes come with potential not so good. And the potential not so good has to do with the climate change dynamics that Guyana is facing. And the reason why I call Guyana a wet neighborhood has to do with some of those dynamics of geography and demography. Most people would know of Georgetown. If you've ever been to Georgetown, you know of something called the seawall. It was a massive stretch of coastline all the way from Punta Cana, Venezuela to Suriname. But the harsh reality of that coastline, it is below sea level. In some places, 6 feet below sea level. And the harsh reality also is that global warming has been leading over the last few decades to the rising of the sea. So the Atlantic Ocean is rising. The coastline is there below sea level in many places, and so you've got significant flooding. There's the water, the seawall, and the marshes and the mangroves aren't able to keep the sea out. So Guyana suffers significant amount of flooding because of that combined dynamic. But there's another reality of Guyana. Guyana has a significant Amazon forest coverage. Most of the Guyanese people live along the coast. But most of Guyana is not coast. Most of Guyana is forest. And forests produce a lot of rainfalls. And what does Guyana mean? The word Guyana means land of many waters. So Guyana has lots of rivers, lots of mountains. And so the combination of the rivers, the mountains, the rainfall presents a unique opportunity for Guyana to, with the coast not being protected from the Atlantic Ocean, and the water coming, a lot of flooding impacting the nation. The good news is that significant forest coverage also captures the bad stuff, carbon, provided by the fuels. So you've got a lot of good news with the oil and a lot of not so good news with the climate change dynamics. And for me, the opportunity now is for Guyana's leaders and Guyana's citizens to be able to manage the climate change dynamics and manage the oil resource. And it's a wonderful thing that Guyana has a natural resource fund, several billion US in there, not only to take care of the certainty of contemporary Guyanese, but to leave something for the future. So Guyana has a bright history in its future, but challenges to be managed with the climate change dynamics. It's a wet neighborhood.
Okay, great. And I said it was my final question, but there's never a final question to ask. I want you to tell me in your personal opinion, sir, what's the final outcome for Venezuela as it stands now? What's the final outcome you think will materialize in your personal opinion?
I think it's too early to tell about the final outcome. I'm not so sure that the planners, military and diplomatic and economic planners in the United States know what the final game plan will be. It's too early to make finality the word of the day. So I think we're witnessing an unfolding situation, and we all have got to keep our eyes on the reality of the changing dynamics. I would say in 3 months, you're likely to see a different scenario than we're seeing right now, but it's too early to tell what that final reality would be.
Okay. Dr. Griffith, I want to thank you a whole lot for your appearance on today's edition of To The Point. Of course, it was a pleasure having to converse with you, sir. And I certainly hope we could, of course, if the dynamics, as you mentioned a while ago, changes for any reason, hope we could have you back on the program to speak about it. Anything you want to ask, Mr. McPhail, before we wrap?
No, I was about to ask the same thing that you just asked. How does he see Venezuela in going forward? Yeah.
All right. Dr. Griffith, once again, thanks you a whole lot.
I want to thank you for the opportunity. And I can say with fear of no contradiction, we can predict that there will be a changing dynamics in the next 3 months.
So true. So
continued.
True. Thank you once again, sir, and all the best, and enjoy the rest of the day.
You as well.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you. Thanks a whole lot. All right. That was Dr. Griffith with us this morning on today's edition of To The Point. We want to thank him a whole lot for being on the program with us this morning. Of course, Mr. McPhail, of course, a little bit of a twist on our regular way of how we do the program, but
that's okay.
Constructive information. That's not unfair a whole lot. This segment, we, of course, give the opportunity to our listeners and viewers if they want to chime in with us for any reason. Probably a question or two they may like to ask, but of course, Dr. Griffith has left us, so I guess they may not even ask him a question, but they only may make a contribution to today's program in terms of anything they want to ask in terms of what's the source of our program this morning. Feel free to do so. We do have a couple more minutes left, just around 5 minutes or so before we take her up today. 435-2041, 435-2041. And anything you want to kick off in this segment before we as we await the callers?
Oh, we had fairly, well, I would not say accident-free holiday season.
Or start of the game. But I think there's one.
There was one yesterday morning about 2:26, I was told, in Montu.
Okay.
A car overturned.
There was one that there was a car that also ran into a pole, an electric pole.
Yes.
And speed always seems to be the order of the day. The order of the day, or the reasons why we see some of these accidents occurring is because of speed. All right. Hope you don't mind me removing my headphones. It's sometimes not something I like functioning with a whole lot, except because when we do have a Zoom call, I have to use it. Caller, you're live. Good morning. Welcome.
Yes, GT, and your guest there. I especially love what Dr. Griffith said in connection with the lack of education at the lower levels. Sometimes when you go to university to pursue a degree, and there are some basic things that people haven't learned. Even just at basic educational level here, there are certain things that the basics, okay, number facts. There are people who are doing CXC, they're going to, and some of them don't even know the basic number facts. They depend now on what do you call the AI, or they depend on just the information that is made available to them. Just a reason they can't add it, they cannot bring addition or these basic things. They can't do it on their own.
Bit concerning, ain't it? Bit concerning.
Yes, so I think we should take heed of these words. It's very true. And at the lower level, people need to be educated more, especially at the primary, what I'm talking about, primary level. And I believe we should take that very seriously, even in our own schools here in Grenada.
Thank you so much, caller. Thank you so much. We do have another caller via the WhatsApp. WhatsApp caller, you're live. Good morning. Welcome. Let's hear from you.
Good morning. Happy New Year.
Good morning. Same to you, sir.
The word pragmatism is a word I'm familiar with, and the true meaning actually resonated with me this morning with the discussion with Dr. Griffin. Pragmatism, and I think it's something we should let sink in and marinate.
Caller, I'm not sure if you're using a Bluetooth device, but we're losing you from time to time in terms of the level of your audio. It goes up and down, so maybe you could fix that a wee bit for us.
No, I don't have any Bluetooth around.
Okay, well, go right ahead. Go right ahead, please. Go right ahead.
So I think pragmatism is something we should let resonate with us well, because it's very important. And another thing I want to reiterate is that he who pays the piper calls to let that resonate.
Thank you. Appreciate that a whole lot. We do have another caller. Caller, live. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, GT, and good morning to, I don't know, to your other host.
Yeah, that's Mr. McPhail with us this morning also.
Okay, it's kind of unfortunate that I have to wish you a happy New Year at this point in time when there
same goes out to you, sir.
Of happiness based on what is happening in the Caribbean and Latin America. But I want to challenge some of the concepts that came over, even on your program now, where because we are small, we had to tiptoe or so, because we need the tourism, we need things. If we are saying that we are Christian people, if we are saying that God is the supreme, why are we serving another God in the person of America or Donald Trump? Unfortunately, though, because the media, the education system have not helped our people to be studious so that they could ask the right question. A lot of people, a number of our people are still misguided and still think, mouthing that this operation has been about drugs, and we know from the beginning, just like in Grenada, they came to restore democracy. Anyway, but they have done that. Historically, they have always, whether it's in Iraq, Saddam was weapon of mass destruction, and all stories, they have been consistent. The other thing about it is that Britain's role The Grenada invasion, the British said that they didn't know, they wasn't consulted. Anybody believes that it's the same thing now with the Venezuelan situation? And listen to the statement that the Prime Minister said, the British Prime Minister, and they're coming to have good relations with us. I think we should really question the sincerity of these people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. Thank you very much. Have a good day yourself. We do have another caller. Caller via WhatsApp. Good morning, you're live. Let's hear from you.
Good morning, Gigi, and Happy New Year.
Same to you. Same goes out to you.
Good.
Yes, I just want to, Mr. McPhail, I know you were not probably, but you're well aware of the Venezuela, position geographically and so because of your survey in past times. The security question, that's what boggling my mind. It was like it was just a walk in the park. That boggles the mind. To me, that there is some suggestion, and this is just my opinion. Having the leader taken out and his subordinates continuing to rule, it tells me something. And as I'm saying, this is just my opinion, that there's a level of bribery taking place in Venezuela. As I say, this is just my opinion, but given the level, because, being involved in security and the leadership and how easy it was, something has to, it's a boggling of the mind. Mr. McPhail, anything you want to share on that? Have a good day.
Caller, I fully agree with you because he was taken out without a shot being fired. And that's not normal.
All right.
That's all I will say.
We do have another caller, which will be our final caller for the morning. Caller, you're live. Good morning. Welcome. Caller, good morning. Guess we lost that caller there. 435-2041. Well, we already are a little bit over time, so I think we're going to take a wrap for today. Mr. McPhail, as usual, I want to thank you for popping in this morning. And certainly was expecting Sylvan popping in this morning, but I guess he will be with us next week, more or less.
Yes.
And of course, it's open to you. If you ever want to join us, feel free. It's okay. Until we have another program. Anything in closing?
No, Trudy. Again, just to wish your listeners and followers the best for 2026.
Yes, I certainly do wish them all the best also. Hey folks, that's what we're going to take a wrap for today's edition of To The Point. Thank all who called in, shared their views. I want to say once again thanks to Dr. Griffith for sharing his insight also on today's edition. Until then, have a good one folks. Join me again tomorrow. Goodbye.